You have probably already asked this question. Why does God allow the innocent to suffer? Why does God allow the suffering of innocent people, innocent children, sometimes people who suffer or even die stupidly without having anything to do with the problem that hit them? Why does God see so much evil in the world and allow it to run free? And this causes so much suffering to innocent people. Probably you've asked this question or you've heard someone asking this question. I've heard so many saying, so it is a question that goes on for centuries. Now, do you know what I don't hear anyone asking? What I've never heard anyone asking is the following question. Why did the most innocent person in history suffer one of the cruelest deaths on the cross? I don't see anyone asking this question. Still, it is one that has everything to do with the first, because if the person wants to know why God allows the innocent to suffer, then let's go to the most innocent of all, who suffered the most. Maybe when you put in the scale the fact that he had no sin and suffered one of the most violent deaths that a human being could suffer, so he was the one who suffered the most and the most innocent one. Then why God, being Almighty, did not stop the suffering of his Son? People do not ask this, but if they ask, they will understand that the answer to the two questions, the first that says, why does God allow the innocent to suffer? And the second question, why did the most innocent person in history suffer one of the cruelest deaths on the cross? The answer to both questions is the same. The answer to these both questions is sin, the human being's sin. Sin is what is behind the human suffering and also God's suffering. The human sin is what causes suffering in the world, and because of the suffering in the world, God also suffers. Because of sin, God had to suffer and subject his Son to the cross to solve the problem of the human being's sin. So look, by the suffering of the Son of God, we understand that not even God could spare himself from suffering, because suffering is the consequence of another law which is in force in humanity, the law of freedom of choice, the law of human will. Because God has created man endowed with his own will, with human will, so man suffers because of this will when it leans to evil, and also God suffers because of the human will. Thinking more deeply about it, if man did not exist, the devil's existence would be irrelevant to God. If man did not exist, the human being did not exist, the devil would already be unraveled, expelled from the presence of God, and powerless to do any harm to God. The devil can only reach God through man. And when does the devil hit the man? When he submits his will to the devil, taking it out of submission to God. I know it's a lot of information for you to digest, but it is essential that you patiently think with me about it. Why does God allow the innocent to suffer? The human will, sin, causes the human suffering. If God is going to prevent people from suffering, He has to take away their will, their free access, the power to freely live. So the human being will no longer be able to choose what they want. So they will become a robot. So what would be the glory of a person who has no freedom to choose what they want? What would be the glory of God if the human being were programmed only to obey? Now you understand that you cannot have both. A being who is free to do whatever they want and at the same time to be free from the consequences of what they do. So the human will not being submissive to God's will is the reason why of the human suffering and also for the divine suffering. Keep this with you. Keep this lesson. Your will is against you. Our will is against us. We don't know how to desire. Our will is corrupted, just like the mental faculties of a person who has mental problems, some sort of problem that affects their intellect, so they are corrupted and impedes them from making decisions. If you have someone in your house who has a mental problem, then you know that this person cannot be left alone. If they cannot use their mental faculties in the proper way, if they are crazy per se, with some mental problem, some mental health problem, if they are left alone, most probably they will get hurt or they will hurt someone. So the person who cannot use their mental faculties properly, so they must be restricted, they must be confined, they must take strong medications. There must always be someone watching over them. Otherwise, they will harm others. In the same way, just as someone with their mental faculties corrupted cannot be entrusted to make decisions alone, we also cannot let our will to go free. Because our will was corrupted. The human will is corrupted. We do not know how to desire, to mean well. We don't know how to mean only well, only good. We want good, but sometimes we want things selfishly. We want things that initially give us pleasure, but then harm us. Am I right? You eat too much, for example, you see with the eyes because the food is so good, and later you have a health problem, you are overweight, so your will harmed you. Initially did well, but later harmed you. You look at somebody, you fall in love for that person, but they are married, or you are married, and you see someone outside the marriage, and you give space for that desire, for the passion, you get involved with that person. Initially, you have some minutes of pleasure, if you even have it, and later you destroy your family, your marriage, and the other person's marriage. So you wanted something that harmed you and harmed others. These are just a few examples. The person wants to have money, but they don't want to put on the work to earn this money, to have to work their fingers to the bone to earn this money. So they do some sort of scam, deceit, they deceive somebody, they make an injustice in this world, they even make money, but later they have a problem with the justice, they end up in prison, they have no peace, they have money but no peace because they have to cover their traces for the wrong things they've done. So you see that people have their will corrupted. The human will is corrupted. This is within us. This is since we are children, because it's in the human blood. Sin is in the blood. So, if you want to get rid of suffering, you don't have to blame God. Oh, God has allowed it. No, you have to look at you. Look at you. Take your will and submit it to God's will. But Bishop, what my will has to do with a drunkard who ran over my son and killed him? What my will had to do with that? I had nothing to do with that. Was the mistake of that drunk man is his responsibility. My child, an innocent child who died by the pavement and a car driven carelessly, what the will of my son had to do with that? Yours, most probably none. However, you must understand that we are inserted in a world with more than 8 billion people and each person with their own will, which includes to drink more than they should, which includes driving a car above the speed limit, and we live in cities that there are many people who do that. So it is unavoidable that you will go through that. Now, is God to be blamed? No, put the blame where it belongs. The blame is on man, is on humans' will. We cannot allow our will to go free. If you allow your will to go free, you will suffer because of it. So the best thing we can do is to submit our will to God's will and to ask Him to keep us in His shelter and to have the comfort that is still in this world, even though we will go through injustices and even an unfair death, but we know through faith in Him, the righteous judge will perform justice in the end. In the end, all will be resolved, because He will take in His hands the judgment, and He will perform justice to those who is due. It's better for you to have peace with the judge than a war against him. If today's video helped you and you know someone that could benefit from it, share it with them, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel, you may do so now. See you later.